Thank you, Dr. Shafat. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today it's an honor to be speaking with all of you on such an issue of importance. Technology. How technology is shaping our lives and how we need to look at technology in all its manifestations is what we've been discussing today. We've had many speakers who have spoken about technology capable of delivering better services and ease of doing business for everyone. But I'm going to be talking about something very different because I come from the Election Commission of India, and if I have to start this presentation, it would be with this one line, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. In today's geopolitical environment, the credibility of elections has become the most critical infrastructure of a country. And I want you to think about it while we go through this presentation. Because all said and done, when elections of a country are taken hostage, nothing else remains. In this context, I'll start my presentation. In India, elections are the bedrock of the entire governance. Through elections, we deliver government after government. How we do it, how we have been evolving, and how we are looking at the challenges that are emerging in terms of technology, in terms of attacks on sovereignty of our country and other countries as well. And when I spoke about elections as critical infrastructure, we all need to remember elections as a critical infrastructure doesn't just mean it is only technology that is causing those challenges to emerge. But technology is exacerbating those challenges. And that's why in today's context, every citizen of every country should be very conscientious about the dangers that are emerging in today's world. While battles will be fought on borders, the silent battle against elections, it is being fought on an everyday basis in our societies, in which misinformation, in disinformation, in false narratives that attack the bedrock of democracy, that is elections. So I'm sure you are not able to see most of it because the screen is kind of covered by the panel. But my slides are not very word-rich, so I'll explain to you. Election management in India is one of the most humongous exercises ever done on planet. If you look at the number of electors in this country is touching 1 million, which is the largest electorate in the whole world. We are the largest democracy, and supporting that largest democracy, we have an infrastructure of 1.1 million polling stations. That is 11 lakh polling stations. Then we have EVMs of equal number, we have polling personnel, huge numbers. This becomes the biggest organization. So when we run these processes, of course, we have to use technology to make it easier for us to conduct elections. And we also have to use technology in a way that all of you accept results after results and do not say, oh, elections have been rigged or they have been hijacked, right? So this is the quantum of election management that Election Commission of India does. We are not like a regular government department where we are providing a service for the ease of citizens. We are there so that citizens have the governments that they deserve. They have the entire structure of governance. So our job becomes very crucial. It's almost like we have to protect elections. When we say protect elections, we have to protect elections from any kind of attack. Any kind of attack. And I'll take you through what kind of attacks happen. And I'll also explain some examples from across the globe so that you understand what's happening in India is not a standalone thing. It is something that's happening across the globe. And as citizens of this biggest democracy, the most vibrant democracy, we should all become aware of this reality. So election management as a public service, when I say, the public service aspect is because we have universal participation of electors. All 18 years of whoever has crossed 18 years and whoever is a citizen of the country gets to vote. Universal adult suffrage. We do not, in our country, we do not deny anyone the opportunity, the chance to cast their ballot. So when the numbers are huge and there is political competition, all kinds of political competition, healthy, unhealthy, whichever way, when the competition is fierce, our counting, our polling is entirely transparent. I don't know how we pull it off, but we do. I've been with the Election Commission for the last 3.5 years, and trust me, every day I get amazed at what we managed to achieve. I take pride in being part of the Election Commission. I used to take pride in being a district election officer when I was posted in the field. I used to think, when you conduct elections, you are actually doing something for your country. It's an act of biggest service, because you are making sure that every person gets to have a voice. The day that the voice does not translate into results will be a big travesty. So when you conduct elections, you feel so proud. And now that I'm at headquarters, the place from where it flows, I can actually see how it's done. I'm part of so many initiatives that take place. Many people do not get to know because our propaganda machine is probably not that strong, or we do not like shouting from the rooftop. We are mostly quiet, but there's a lot that goes into election management, which most people don't know. So evolution of technology. So I understand today we are talking about digital technology. And Dr. Shafkat, I would request you please, we are anyway a very small panel. So I hope there's not much. This is a very crucial thing. And I'm not just making this presentation because I'm here. I'm usually very passionate when I'm speaking about elections. So how the technology has evolved. And we're talking about digital technology. And for youngsters out there, you have to understand India was not always voting like we vote today. How we voted way back in 1950 when we got Election Commission. And you would be surprised to know that even before we became a republic on 26 January 1950, Election Commission came in being on 25th of January. Why we as citizens need to understand that if the country had to remain a republic, remain a democracy, there had to be an election commission even before we became a republic. So in 1950, the election commission came into being. Then it was given the onerous job of conducting elections in a country which was mostly illiterate. The voter list wasn't there. So in 1952, we had our first elections with ballot paper, of course, the physical ballot paper. And gradually we moved across years, and then we saw the emergence of EVM. Now EVM, everybody says, oh, so can be hacked. There must be something wrong you guys must be doing. What's happening with EVM? And I'm telling you, you can, you can ask me those questions. Nothing is not allowed. EVMs came. Then after EVMs, we got VVPATs. VVPATs are like voter verifiable paper voting trail. Now, I understand digital technology, but technology in itself becomes digital when you go the digital route. We could have also chosen to do that. So what we have chosen to do is we have gone digital in areas where we think that credibility of elections will be compromised. Tomorrow, if someone says that elections have been hijacked because there's too much of technology, how much of technology to use, which technology to use, has to be calibrated based on a host of factors. Those factors will come to. So across so many decades after VVPAT, we came for digital apps. We had mobile apps. After mobile apps, then we had around 45 to 50 multiple applications. In 2025, you would be pleased to know that ECI has launched just one umbrella solution for everyone. Be it you, me, or even the CEC himself, ECI Net. Everything has been subsumed into that umbrella. It is the entire universe of Election Commission of India. From voter to booth level officer, to presiding officer, to SDM, to DM, to CEO, everybody on one platform. And that ECI Net is the age in which we are now. So technology-wise, we're moving. There are many other things we have done technology-wise, which I'll take you through. Next, I'll show you what are the various aspects of elections in which we use technology. Now, when you see elections, you look at elections in terms of आज election में चलो वोट डालते हैं नहीं डालते हैं holiday पे जाते हैं that's a funny thing. Election is a year-long exercise. Your electoral role is getting revised every day. How many changes happen? How do we maintain that data? Electoral rolls of 1 million people, of 28 states, 8 union territories, having different governments. That will play a role, and how many people are turning 18 every day, how many people are dying, how many people are shifting from one place to another. So elections, the work of elections happens every day. But the actual conduct of election involves polling, counting, expenditure monitoring, and so many other aspects that you don't even get to see. So when we look at this huge logistical exercise, technology enables us. But what we don't use technology in the core aspect of polling, the core aspect of counting. Because credibility, if it's not there, then people are going to say there's something went wrong with polling or something went wrong with counting. So that's why we use it in a very ancillary manner. I'll share two global examples, and if you go back, do this exercise, especially the youngsters, you are afflicted, you have to safeguard this entire process. In Kenya, the elections, the results transmission failed, and thus they had an electronic transmission of the counting of votes. So when it failed, the entire election was called off. In Australia, in New South Wales, they had an online voting system called iVote. It appeared that a lot of voters tried to avail themselves of the facility and it failed, so that election also had to be called off. There are multiple examples in the entire world where elections are getting challenged, either because of technology that is being used or because of many other factors. But across the globe, democracy is being challenged by factors, by players who do not want democracy to exist. Who wants democracy? Who needs democracy? I mean, the powerful would need democracy, it's the underdogs. Why is the underdogs? People who will not have a voice if democracy weren't there. So across the globe, there is an emerging challenge against democracy, and hence elections are getting attacked left, right, and center. How technology becomes a tool that elections are attacked? How is it that we face those challenges? So now AI-generated videos. One community people killing another, EVM getting hacked, EVM being programmed, or creating videos that easily destroy people's trust. What do we trust now? All these videos, document videos, AI-generated videos, you can show political leaders making some statements that they might not have made. In this era of misinformation and disinformation, what is sacrosanct? What do you trust? So then again, EVM keeps getting attacked, and I'll talk about EVMs for a second because even my closest friends who are in the service, they say, can EVM be hacked? And I said, okay, technology can be hacked, but procedures cannot be. When you have robust procedures, technology may be, but if technology with regular auditing, regular observation by political parties, by candidates, by everyone, I mean, you are seeing it all the time. Where do I go there and do something with it? And EVM is a standalone machine. I'm saying this because why we have not got for internet voting or using digital technologies, because they can be hacked. EVM is a one-time programmable chip. It cannot be reprogrammed. EVM cannot be connected to Bluetooth, any network. It is just a standalone device like a calculator. You press this, okay, one, you press the other one, then two. So it just keeps a tally of the number of times the button is pressed. Then again, we have also given you VVPAT. You look at the slip as it comes out, it stays there for 7 seconds, you say, oh yeah, I voted for this party. I see it falls back. We don't give you that slip because then you'll go off. Secrecy of voting could be violated, right? But we keep those slips intact. In case of any dispute, we can get it counted. All those systems are there. You know what happens to EVM? When EVM is brought to the district warehouse, all political parties' candidates are there. You see, the first level check, they are there. When it is taken for first randomization, which is when they are first sent to the constituencies. So let's say there are 4 constituencies, I'll say 25% go here, 25% here. That division, then the second randomization, when they go to polling stations, then also politicians are there. Then after that, when polling is going on, their agents are sitting there, they sign up, the polling gets over. They are there at the time of mock poll. After polling gets over, when the EVM is being taken away, they escort the vehicle. Then it is kept in strong room, they are still there. After it is sealed, they sit there, we make a camp-like structure for them, and they sit there all the time till it is brought out for counting. So when something is attacked, it is very important to understand the basics of it and understand. So yes, any kind of people in Europe and all, because I think attending these conferences, why does India not move back to ballot paper? So I say, your populations, yes, you can afford to. If we start doing ballot paper, how many countries will we have to cut for our elections, like the trees and all? And then they are going to come shouting. EVMs are not electronic in the electronic sense of the term. Everyone needs to understand that. What is electronic is something that is connected to the digital space, completely electronic. It is merely a tabulation device. Why I am talking about it today is because we are talking about digital technologies. The only reason we will not go to digital, many countries did, and they went back to ballot paper because the systems got cracked. And that's why elections in India, till the time people actually want it, I don't think we should be doing it. So the fact is that we look at when we adopt any technology, those factors, they have to be the legal and institutional framework that can actually support adoption of that technology. Preparedness of the public, trust, political will. The ecosystem has to be such that the technology will be adopted and accepted, and it will be fair to everyone and also ensure electoral credibility. So the bottom line is credibility. As long as the credibility is there, elections will be fine. Once the credibility gets compromised, everything gets toppled then. These are the challenges which we have already gone through once. People want more transparency, but how much of transparency can we? People ask us for, show us what's inside you and how you do it. And so there is a limit, because once you know everything, then it might be easier to hack it or do something with it. I don't know what they will try to do, but as a constitutional body, we also have a mandate to keep our electoral process safe from any kind of manipulation. So credibility I've already spoken about, and I'll end my presentation with this, just saying that today's world is very, very challenging. We have so many challenges emerging due to technology, and also the kind of polarized world we are living in today. Elections, by far, are the most important and most critical infrastructure we need to save, and we need to safeguard if we have to have it tomorrow. Thank you.
So you were talking about cybersecurity, transparency, and the third thing?
And the entire
Trust, credibility, yes. Thank you for the question. So these three aspects are so deeply intertwined. Elections are nothing without trust. Elections are nothing without credibility. And then trust cannot exist without transparency. What is transparency? If we look at Election Commission vis-a-vis their citizens, vis-a-vis their electors, we are transparent all the way. You can see anything, our electoral rolls, the entire conduct of poll, you can question everything. There is a system, legal system in place, and also a procedural system in place, in which political parties, candidates, even citizens, everyone has access to whatever we are doing. It is completely transparent. But when it comes to cyber security, Election Commission has to guard its electoral roll, its entire data from cyber security perspective. Let me tell you, many organizations, like we had a speaker from Ministry of Defense, and they're talking about cyber security and how defense is using it. During 2024 Lok Sabha elections, we had to be similarly guarded. If our results website even went down for a little bit, the entire country would be in uproar. Oh, Election Commission is doing something wrong. What's wrong? Why can't we see the results? So we also have a very fortified system.
So
We
you
don't-
had cyber attacks also?
Oh, of course. The number of hits that were there on our website where we show results. And that's why when I say elections as critical infrastructure, any country, I mean, you must have seen so many examples even in our neighborhood, how elections, how questioning elections can become the reason for that country crashing. And that's why at Election Commission of India, we are very cognizant of that fact. So we guard the entire electoral process, but also any kind of technology. So there are many times people tell us, oh, you don't use AI in elections, you are not using all of this stuff for analytics. In fact, I was having a discussion with one of the co-panelists in the other panel, and I was like, do you actually think using technology in the core area of elections is going to help us? It might become our Achilles heel, it might become what brings us down. So anything that we do technology-wise has to stand a test of trust and transparency from the side of electors. Because at the Election Commission of India, one maxim we follow, we are with the electors come first. So as long as all of you have faith in the Election Commission of India, everything stays fine. Well, I'm not techie, but as I see, the biggest impact is probably what I see today, not as an administrator, but just as a general citizen of the world, is going to be AI. Not in terms of just improving the services, but rather, and I'm saying this with full conviction, humans are going to abandon their own intelligence. That is going to be the biggest impact that AI is going to have on all of us as a collective. And that's why I think while we are using AI to improve service delivery, we should also be looking at AI in terms of our civilization as a whole. I'm sorry I'm taking this in the other direction, but our children, the coming generations, they need to be, because we'll stop thinking intelligently because AI is going to do everything for us. And we'll stop thinking, we'll stop being creative, we'll stop generating ideas. What created AI might actually ask to diminish our intelligence to create anything further because it will be doing all the creation. So I think that's the biggest dangers, but of course it will improve service deliveries, but it will impact our civilization in a massive way.
Sigal Kumar.